Hey everybody, welcome to Think Your Way to an Epic Life. And I have an icon sitting across the table from me, and you are going to have so much fun with this interview. You've seen him, you've probably been in classes of his if you're in real estate at all. Bill McCoy, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Kara.
Oh,
this is exciting.
I know, it's so much fun. It's so much fun. So, let's just start at the beginning. Where were you born and raised?
Rainy Tuesday night in Hobbs is where I was born, and shortly thereafter, I was spirited off to Santa Fe with my mother and father. Dad got a different job up there. We lived in Santa Fe for 5 years, moved to Dallas for 3 years, so I wasn't homeless when Dad worked there. And then in 1966, they brought us back here to Albuquerque, and I've been here ever since.
Wow. That's pretty close to lifelong native right there. Those 5 years, they're,
Yeah, the 3 years in Dallas don't count.
Oh, three years. Okay. Yeah, no, that doesn't count. You don't want to be a Texan, do you?
No.
No, okay. So you're a true New Mexican.
Yes.
And you've been in Albuquerque solid since 1966. So you have seen some major changes.
Yes, ma'am.
What are some of the biggest changes you've seen?
Well, that's hard to say, except I guess in 1966 when we got here, my Little League ball field was where El Dorado High School is now, way out on the east edge of town. Tramway was a dirt road, and now I live east of Tramway.
Oh, wow. You've come a long way, baby.
I think the population was about 100,000 when we got here.
Wow.
And
it's grown.
now we're at 700 or something, depending upon who you listen to.
That's a lot of peeps, and not to mention, Rio Rancho and Los Lunas and everywhere else is growing around us. So, how did you end up? You graduated high school here, and then what?
I didn't graduate high school. I left early and got a GED to go into the Navy.
Thank you for your service.
Well, it was short and unillustrious. I found out pretty quick it was not for me, but I'm an honorably discharged naval veteran and came back here to Albuquerque after that to do the love of my life, which was automotive work. And
I did not know that.
After a few years, I had to change careers, and I'd had a back injury that indicated I couldn't stay bent over cars for the rest of my life. And this is the late 1970s, so I've got friends who are just killing it in the real estate business. And I made the determination that I should do that.
You like the idea of killing it?
I did.
Yes, a whole lot more than wrenching.
I'm not sure that was true, but I couldn't keep that going. And my dear mother and father very supportive of that. But when my mom found out what I was doing, she called and she said, I just want you to know, I bought all the leftover greeting cards, all the leftover candy, everything else you were supposed to sell for fundraising. I'm not buying any real estate. And true to her word, she never bought any real estate from me.
I'll be darned.
But I know that my father, who grew up in the corporate world, spent 30 years praying I would get a real job.
Right.
They just didn't understand the commission, etc.
Right. I mean, what are you doing with your life?
Exactly. Go to work 8 to 5, 5 days, 2 weeks off, get a paycheck.
And you did the exact opposite of that.
Yes, I did.
So why? Where did that come from?
Well, I got in, we had a young family. I had to make a living, and I wasn't satisfied with so many dollars per hour. Even when I was a mechanic, I worked on a flat rate, which meant that I could bill 16 to 18 hours a day at what then was an impressive wage.
Right.
So once I got into the real estate business, I just love it. I'm a numbers guy. And our business is full of those if you want to waste your time with them.
Well, I think you're proof that it's not a waste of time.
Well, it's a different path.
Right. So let's talk about your path. Okay, so tell me where you started in real estate.
I started in real estate with the ERA franchise. At that time, it was Electronic Realty Associates. Our claim to fame was a nationwide network of G3 fax machines.
Woo, baby.
I could get you a completely illegible photo of any listing in America in 6 minutes if I was there to pick up the phone and cradle it. So it was kind of cutting edge technology stuff. And the first franchise I went to work for was not well run, went bankrupt. It wasn't my fault.
Of course not.
And I went to work for Mary Jo and Chuck at another ERA franchise. And they really were my training brokers, how to do this business right. And got me involved with Tommy Hopkins and the other sales coaches that were out there at this time. You mean there's a science to this?
No.
I had no idea that what we do can be broken down into steps. And when you consistently take the same steps, you get to the right place. And at the end of my first 2 years in the real estate business, two of my dearest friends, one of them is a second-generation CPA. Well, he was working for a Big 8 accounting firm for $20,000 a year. And that was okay for wages at that time. But I made the $1 Million Club my first year in the business.
Woo!
And not as easy to do as it is today at $20,000 per house.
Right.
But I looked at what my opportunities were, and I decided that I'd just keep on going with this and make a little bit more money than my friend. My other friend was an electrical engineer running a McDonald's. And
wow.
I thought a lot about them because I had taken a step out of academia and thought, well, those degrees are doing them a lot of good. And they both became very successful, of course. And that's just a different path.
Well, yeah, totally different path. So I would say freedom is probably a really important value to you.
I guess flexibility more than freedom. It's an interesting way of asking the question.
Okay.
I did enjoy the fact that as my daughter was growing up, I didn't have to miss plays, etc. I could be there.
Right.
I could work as much as I wanted and when I wanted. And once I learned how to control that in a productive fashion, it's always been a really cool ride.
How did you learn to control that?
I guess the first time I actively began to control that, I had worked for others. I opened my own office in 1985. And as you know, if you goof off today, it doesn't hurt your revenue tomorrow. So I did my share of goofing off until I realized that the golf game today affects my revenue in 90 days. And so I had to focus, schedule. I still had the flexibility to do what I wanted when I wanted, but I just needed to understand this is a job, like anybody else gets out of bed, but most other people have somebody tell them what they do to get what they're going to do when they get to work. Mm-hmm. I had to tell me.
Okay, so you mentioned that Tom Hopkins, was he your personal coach?
No, it was a nationwide
kind
of a deal. Everybody who had a caring broker was involved with his programs, and it all revolved around cold calling, scripts, etc.
Right.
The first time I successfully used a script, well, I'll be darned, that worked.
Isn't it fascinating?
And like everybody else who begins to learn scripts, I can't do that. I can't just repeat from rote. But it's one of my favorite real estate stories. And whether it was Tommy or one of the other trainers, had created a flip book. Here's the question you ask, and the answers were tabbed. And I thought, I spent good money, probably $45 for this.
Right? Right?
I'm going to prove them wrong, or I'm going to make it work. And I got a call from a young lady. I was on floor, and she said, I really don't want to waste your time, but my husband and I just got married, and we'd like to know what we should do so that we can be homeowners fairly soon. If I could show you how to be a homeowner today, would you be interested? She said, I'll call you back. 2 minutes later, yes, we would. I said, okay. And I had the perfect little starter house owned by my broker with seller financing. I said, I know you're probably not ready to make a move, but I'd love to show you this little home today. Would 12 or 1 be better? 1 o'clock, but my husband can't make it. I said, that's okay. So I went over and showed her the house at 1 o'clock. And she called me back about 2, and she said, my husband wants to come see the house at 5:30. And so I met them over there, and I just followed the script. We finished looking at it. I said, if you've got time, let's go back to the office and see what the paperwork will look like when we find your home. Off they came to the office with me, and I took out, you'll appreciate this, the 1-page purchase agreement
Gosh.
for buying a home. And I said, now, first thing we're going to start with, and you could just see him doing this. I said, don't worry. Let's just practice. I'm going to send this home with you. I said, I need your full names. Okay. I'm going to fill in the address and the legal description. And this house costs, at list price, $52,000. So that goes here. And this homeowner will accept a $5,000 cash down payment. So I'm going to fill that in. And they'll carry a real estate contract. And we calculated the payments, and I stepped through.
You did all that on 1 page.
All on 1 page. And most of it blank, Kara. And at the end of it, I took the pen and I put it in my pocket. And I turned the contract around and I said, take this home and study it. So you won't have any questions when we find your home. And then I closed them. And I said, if by some chance, when you get up tomorrow morning, you think you'd like to buy this house, sign it and call me. I'll pick it up with the earnest money check. 7 a.m. Mr. McCoy, I was 11, so that was a very interesting statement. We want to buy this house. I showed them one home.
Wow.
Spent less than 2.5 hours with them, start to finish, and fell in love with scripts, began to understand the science of what we do, how people react to what we say, and it was a great starter home. 10% down, seller financing, life was good.
Gosh, what a cool story.
So I wore that book out until I had it memorized.
Yeah, people don't, they think that it's such a big leap to go be a realtor and be an entrepreneur. And maybe that's true if no one had ever been one before, correct?
I guess that's true. I'd always worked for commissions. I was an entrepreneur. My first retail enterprise was interrupted in 7th grade when the principal took away my tiny slingshot sales kit. I was making hairpin slingshots and selling them for $0.10 a piece. And they were mom's hairpins, so my cost of goods sold was almost nothing. But that got interrupted by the principal.
Oh, yeah, they kind of step on your dreams a little bit.
Jumping forward in the story, my daughter went to the same junior high I did. And on the first introductory night, we took her in and so on. First thing I said was, Okay, don't tell your humanities teacher you belong to me. And then we went into the classroom that had been the end of my retail journey at that time because I had taken out the clock crystal with a little chip, and the little chip was still there, these many years later.
Oh, gosh.
I've always been an entrepreneur. It was not in my blood from at least mom and dad, but
Wow.
that's the way my brain works.
It obviously is. So you went from selling your first home. How long was it until you thought, I'm helping all these other people build wealth?
That was a perfect quote because that was the light bulb on that. And so I guess we bought our first home in probably 1984.
Okay.
I'd been in the business 4 or 5 years and had a little bit of money and a little bit of earnings power. And I had come to the realization prior to getting into the real estate business, I had asked one of my wife's mother's friends, who was a broker, to help us buy a house. And they told me, you can't do that. You don't have enough money down, etc. And by the time I realized what the reality was, we were kids, there's no doubt, but I could have put up to 50% down on most of the houses in the Albuquerque market and seller financed. And I would have lived in places I would never consider living today. So I realized that way too many brokers misunderstand that motivation can make up for any other
Limitation. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. So that's pretty horrible that a realtor who's supposed to help people buy houses dissuaded you.
Right.
So what do you have to say to realtors today?
Let people make their own decisions. There is a way to put everybody in a house. Sometimes seller financing is hard to do, but there are so many financing avenues, so many opportunities, and I try not to be grumpy. I think everything is a lesson, but that home would have been paid off by the time I'd been in the real estate business for 5 years. And
Wow.
so it was time to acquire and do all of that. And I went from that little house where we lived to 54 apartment units and single family units in the Albuquerque metro area, as far away as Grants, New Mexico, where I thought I'd called the bottom of the market. Didn't.
I've been there, done that.
So I was a millionaire before I was 30, and it's a good thing because I gave a lot of money back in the late 1980s crash of our market. And
So you've been through the highs and the lows and wow. Okay, so you went from buying your first house. Tell me about the first investment property that you purchased.
the first investment property I purchased was a 20-acre tract out in the Estancia Valley.
Oh, my.
To subdivide into 5-acre lots. And the other part of what I think has made me happy and successful is I never take anything for granted. And I found this 20-acre tract, which I now know I bought from a crook, but I made money. And I found out that land in the Estancia Valley, if it had water rights, was worth twice as much as dry land. So I picked up the phone, I called the state engineer. I said, just exactly what does it take for me to get 2.5 acre feet of water rights on this 20 acres? Short version of the story, I had to spend $28 on a newspaper ad, wait for 5 weeks, and pay a $2 permit fee.
To double the value of your property.
To double the value of that little 20 acres. And so not only was there a profit in the subdivision, I doubled the value of it by playing a reasonably simple but smart real estate game. And I sold out all 4 tracts at a nice little profit. Had to take one of them back, which I still own half of. But I'd already made all my money back plus a tidy profit. And by then, I understood seller financing. I was involved with a group called the Albuquerque Real Estate Exchange. They're still going, called the New Mexico Council of Exchangers.
Right.
And so I just sat back every Thursday and looked at the inventory and figured out when I wanted to buy something, how to finance it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. It's so exciting. I tell you, going to the exchangers meetings is one of the most exciting things that you can do in real estate. For some people, I guess probably most people watching would say that it is terribly boring, but it just gets those juices flowing, doesn't it?
It's creative real estate at its best.
Yes.
And they have a term called black hatting, which anytime somebody says that won't work, they get thrown out of the meeting because everything works. It's just a matter of how well and how long it takes and how much work.
What's one of the craziest things you've seen happen in exchangers? I've heard stories about the Christmas parties.
Yeah, we won't talk about some of the parties. That was back in the open bar days where liability was not
a thing, yes.
Not a really big deal. I guess from my perspective, almost everything's exciting. It's great to see brokers get together, match their clients' needs with their abilities, and structure a transaction.
It's just really good stuff.
It works really well.
And everybody there seems to be so thinking, how can we make this work for that person?
Correct.
And get excited about it even though they have nothing to do with it. But like, oh wait, we could do this and do this and do that. And it's amazing how they...
I've made millions of dollars in that room.
I have no doubt. I watched you one day. I was just like, wow. Because I'd been coming for about a year, and then you came in, and you're just like, okay, I'll sell this and throw that. And like, wow, who knew?
Exactly.
Who knew? Okay, so you have what I would consider to be generational wealth. Why was that important to you?
You know, it really wasn't important in the beginning.
Okay.
And I think that's another key. I have never done what we do for money.
Cool.
It's a handy way to keep score.
Right.
But I love helping people get into real estate. I love solving problems. And when you do that, it's a Zig Ziglar quote I know you know, you can have anything you want as long as you help other people get what they want. And so, ups and downs, and all the above, I always made a good living. Some years better than others, without a doubt, but I consistently, after I rebuilt everything after the late 80s trauma, have bought and held real estate, paid off mortgages, etc. And I certainly hope the generational thought is true, because when I began thinking about how are you doing, how are you going to take care of the kid and that grandkid, and by the way, a great-grandson coming in March.
Oh, how exciting.
I looked at what my dad had done. Always the button-down, squared-away corporate guy. Fund your 401k, don't overspend, and I just kept on a very narrow focus of doing that. And you turn around at some point and go, I'm worth 4 times what Dad was, and he was very comfortable. And so I still don't do what I do for money.
Right.
But
yeah,
I wouldn't do it for free. That would be crazy.
Well, of course, I'm willing to bet that it's really exciting to you to get to do what you do if you're teaching someone else how to do it that really wants to learn. Okay. Yeah.
Nothing more gratifying.
Oh, that's cool. All right. Well, I'm going to sign up for your for your investment classes because I'm really interested. I've got a few, but I haven't focused on it, and it's time to focus.
Yeah.
It's just crazy not to, especially with what we do for a living.
And we're on the front lines.
Yeah.
We see the best inventory first, and if we're careful and learn, we know how to structure a transaction.
Right. Very cool. All right. So, real estate for real estate's sake, are you still helping people if somebody wants to buy or sell a house?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I gave that up completely in June.
Okay. How does it feel?
It was very odd in the beginning. I spent about 30 days, and for what you do, I think that's an important insight. I was wandering around a little lost. There were moments of pure joy. Oh, I don't have to be anywhere right now. And then at the end of the day going, what did I accomplish? And retirement, or semi-retirement as it is today, is just like working life. You have to have a schedule, a purpose. You have to move forward consistently if you want to win the game.
And you obviously want to win the game.
I want to win the game.
Yes. And, I kind of think the way to win the game of life is to have several really good, deep relationships with a lot of people.
Yes.
And you exemplify that.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. I mean, you are somebody in this industry that we all appreciate and look up to. You are teaching once a month or so now.
Right.
Okay. And what's your favorite class to teach?
My favorite classes are the investment classes.
Right.
Teaching people how to crunch the numbers and build wealth and all of that.
All that fun stuff. Okay.
But I enjoy the rest of it also. And I began teaching by mistake.
Do tell.
My mother would have killed to have told Mrs. Greenspan, my fourth grade teacher, that I'm now a teacher. She would have bet against it. But I began doing exchanges with the exchangers, and nobody knew what we were doing. So Joy Fitzpatrick, a escrow officer here in Albuquerque at the time, said, Bill, why don't we just teach a class on how to do exchanges? I said, well, I don't know. Why would I do that? And she says, number one, you can make X dollars an hour. I said, okay, now you have my attention, because that would allow me to take my time away from prospecting and doing the other stuff. And so we wrote and got approved a little 8-hour class on exchanges. And the first time I taught it, it was just like when I learned about scripts. Okay, deliver the material, test the material, etc. And at the end of the day, I felt like everybody had learned something that was worth their entry fee. And then I began thinking about my other passions in this business, which are all the mechanics. So I got approved for a little map and survey course. And apparently I did fairly well doing that, because I got Paul Brown's attention at the New Mexico Real Estate Institute, who invited me to come on board and do some continuing education work. And it went crazy from there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for serving us all in that way.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Okay, so what is some of the best advice that you've ever received?
Interestingly enough, the two best pieces of advice I ever got, one was one word and one was 2 words. The one word came from my father. We were watching a documentary about a fellow in Alaska in the outback. Dad said, you know, in a different life, I could have enjoyed that. And I looked at him and I said, but you could die of appendicitis or something like that that's completely curable out there. He looked at me and he said, so? Kara, that took me 10 years to digest.
Wow.
He didn't fear death. Just natural part. And the other was from a gentleman most everybody knows named Lou Tolga. He was my qualifying broker, taught me many things, mentored me. And I was presenting to get approved for a 1031 class. And Lou looked at me and said, "Have you read Treasury Decision 8346? And I looked at him. I said, "No, I've read all the summaries, etc." And he looked at me and said, "Why not?" I don't know. And so my love of doing the research in the business, and Lou was a major influence because he is so kind and so giving. And I've tried to pattern most of what I do after his genre of teaching. And otherwise, the rest of the advice is all pretty standard stuff. Suit up, show up, put in the hours. And I had brokers and trainers who were patient with me, as young and brash as I was, to keep me on the straight and narrow.
Okay. So it sounds like if you were to look back over your career life, you would be really pleased with how everything has worked out and is still working out.
Yes.
What about your personal life?
That had an interesting start, at least from my perspective. In the summer of 1977, I was working at Ed Black Chevrolet as a line mechanic. And one of my friends from the make-ready department set me up on a blind date. Well, that blind date turned into marrying Jody.
Wow.
And we've struggled in a number of ways, financially and emotionally, and marriage is a job, if you will, with its own requirements. But we've always gotten through, we've always supported each other, and we are, if opposites attract, that may be the secret for what's now 45 years of marriage. And we've done very well. We've got a daughter, 2 granddaughters, and an upcoming great-grandson. We can do pretty much as we please without worrying about finances, etc.
I've seen the two of you together, like over the years, and you have fun together.
Yes, we do.
I mean, you, after 45 years, wouldn't you seem to get tired of somebody?
Nope.
How do you keep it fresh?
I guess by having no expectations beyond respect and love. And we'll do anything. We've been on over a dozen cruises. I've driven 1 million miles in America for pleasure. And so we love traveling, etc. We still get crosswise with each other now and again on a really surface level.
Sure.
And then we figure out what we're going to do about that little disagreement, and we just move forward.
Yeah. And your at-home canine kids, they bring a lot of joy.
Yes, they do. 2 Bichon Frises and a miniature poodle.
Yeah.
We swore we'd never have little yappy dogs, and now we have it in 3s.
Triplicate, yes, we do. Oh, how fun. Well, that's cool. So what advice would you last leave? People are just, I know you don't realize how much of an icon you are and how much respect you have in this industry. There's no way you could. But whoever's listening to this, what would you tell them about how to do your life the right way from here on out?
Be patient. Trust the process. Do the work. It's going to be cool.
It's worth it.
It is.
It's worth it. Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Fun opportunity.
Cool. We'll do it again sometime if you're up for it.
I probably am.
Okay. All right. Thank you.